Welcome back to Chasers, actually, and this one's going to be a little off the cuff. I thought some of you might fancy a mid-season check-in of sorts. Fancy. Also, hello to the podcast feed, by the way. I do not post the second season of Chasers on the podcast feed. It is pretty visual. It's Evelyn and I, opening up packs of cards, talking about them, oftentimes not in terribly descriptive terms. So I don't think it quite works without the video. I know Spotify supports that. I could upload them there, but it would go out as audio everywhere else. And again, I just don't think it works. Prove me wrong, let me know. Either way, if you ever wonder what the heck I'm talking about, just roll on over to the YouTube channel and you'll see all of the season 2 videos of Chasers that I'm talking about. And something I don't necessarily advertise about those videos is that they were filmed in advance. It was just the best way to go about keeping up this new schedule for 2025, where you're going to see a Tetris Tuesdays at 10 on Tuesday, and then a Chasers on Wednesday and a cinematic on Friday. But since I did film them in advance, and since season 2 is a bit different than season 1 I was going through kind of the history of the cards that I collected back in the 90s. Season 2 is Evelyn and I currently collecting cards from the 90s, and subsequent seasons will be just that with different series. And I've already talked about these, but I've got a box of DC's Cosmic cards here from 92. I've got X-Men Series 2 here from 93, and these very, very cheap Star Trek cards, literally $30 for both boxes, from 1991. And initially, patrons are going to vote on which ones we do next, but there are more options now. At least 5 options to be exact. And one of them has me collecting comics, like actual physical comic books, for the probably very first time since, I'm going to say 1993, I think was when I stopped buying them in the store. Or at least at that point I was receiving them in the mail from Entertainment Weekly, I believe, if that rings a bell. But the reasoning behind it is so dumb that I love it even more. And it wouldn't be possible if it weren't for at least 2 things, one of which is actually not in my garage, if you can believe it. It's Paradise Records and Trading Post in sunny Santa Maria, California. And while I'd love to take you inside, I think I'll save that for a separate video. So support your local shop either way. For now, I'll just tell you that they have an entire aisle full of dollar comics from the 80s and beyond, maybe some 70s in there too, but up till current day. So that's the first thing. The second thing that has made this possible is the death of Superman. The first one, or the one from the 90s, I guess, which I did collect actually somewhat. I got the big ones more or less, anything especially shiny, I was going for it. And a smattering of the collectible cards that Skybox put out with DC commemorating the events. And I don't remember collecting these at all, but here they are, 41 random cards. I don't have any chase cards, and no doubles for that matter. Where did I get these? So yes, the gears start spinning. The eBay searches intensify. And turns out you can take home a sealed box of these for under $40, which is actually pretty darn reasonable when compared to some of the other ones I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. But if I'm going to open these up with Evelyn, she needs to know what's going on, right? So I took her to the shop and we raided the dollar bin for anything in the Death of Superman storyline here, which, if you know what you're looking for, it's not too hard. Apparently this was a naming convention that was not just singular to the Death of Superman storyline, but if you get that triangle there, and it's the 1993 one, you can kind of pick out the 40 books you'll need with relative ease. And we ended up finding 29 of those 40 books in the storyline, by which I mean, I think we got all of them in the actual storyline, because yes, the Death of Superman is full of some of the best bloat the 90s had to offer. These are the stupidest ones right here. Check them out. So these, they're not in bags because I already own them. So I rebought comics that now exist in the dollar bin. I rebought dollar bin versions so I could read them without touching the other ones that belong in the dollar bin. They actually all still have the posters intact too. Are all of these bangers? No. Are some of them? Yeah. Actually, I think there's some good writing and some good to great art amongst them, amongst all the unnecessary tie-ins and whatever. And just part of me likes the idea because it is so emblematic of that era. You know, the death of Superman was both the zenith and the death knell all at the same time, I feel like. And one I was there for. So yeah, it's almost as if nostalgia gives you some sort of unjustifiable appreciation for things sometimes. So yes, I say it's dumb because as I've gotten back into, you know, reading comics for a few years now, I'd love to have physical books in my hand. You know, like it's the preferred, or my preferred method at least. The look, the feel, the smell, whatever it is. But I cannot afford it. So I go digital most of the time. And the idea that this is what would bring me back, I find a little bit funny. You can take the kid out of the 90s, I guess. And for those of you thinking, great, what are the other options? Let me talk to you about Marvel Masterpieces, because I, of course, collected the 92 set back in the day, loved it to death, did a whole episode on it. I'll link it down below for season 1 of Chasers. In fact, it might have been the episode I enjoyed doing the most. And while the 93 and 94 series rolled around when I was kind of getting out of the habit anyway, I remember my teen-addled mind seeing them and being like, well, these aren't as good. Anyway, I was really focused on artists back then, which still love, you know, I've got a special spot in my heart for Joe Jusko just because of it, but was unnecessarily critical of other artists. But as I've been looking back at those 93 and 94 sets, they're great. I don't know what I was thinking back then. Joe Jusko actually did come back and do a fair amount. In fact, I think most of the 93 set. And where he didn't, you still got artists like Bill Sienkiewicz, George Perez, John Romita. So what's not to love? The 94 set, oh yeah, so I bought a 93 box. See, there it is, right there. Got it, just waiting. The 94 set, which I do also have now, sealed box, it was done entirely by the Hildebrand brothers, which I didn't know them from comics, I will admit. In fact, I don't know that that was necessarily their bread and butter. They did do a lot, but they also did the Star Wars poster, like the Star Wars poster from 1977. And the cards, who cares? Like they're just fantastic, period. And when the 2016 set came out, and I've talked about this before too, I'll never be able to collect them because I am not a millionaire, but they have since, and I did a supplemental episode of this where I opened up a booster box of the Marvel Masterpieces from 2016 XL, and my mom actually got me a straight up box. So not just a booster box full of whatever it was, like 3 packs of 3 cards or something like that. An actual honest to goodness box. She also got me this shirt, actually, by the way, if you're wondering. Have not been to Comic-Con at the time of filming this episode, but the art is also by Joe Jusko. So didn't plan it, honestly. I in fact usually try not to be so samey, but it was just the shirt that fell out of the closet this morning. So lastly, and this is the most dangerous box I'm going to show you today. Last year in 2024, I believe as the license may have been about to run out, Skybox, or Upper Deck as Skybox, whichever, released what they called the Marvel Masterpieces 92 Platinum set of cards, where they literally just reissued the artwork from '92, with some exceptions, the Lost Ladies, as they're called, pieces of art that didn't make it into the original base set, but I believe were in collectible tins, if I'm not mistaken. They're in here. They replaced some cards because it's still a 100 card base set. But why it's the most dangerous one is that, number one, too expensive, which honestly I could say about all of the boxes of Marvel Masterpiece cards that I bought. But this one is not fair. This one, like, the base cards are on chromium cardstock. So like they're all shiny. Speaking of not being able to take the 90s out of the kit. Cards are shiny, but otherwise this mirrors what they're currently doing in the collectibles scene. So I don't understand it. Number one, let's be clear. But also it's like, what if I did? Right? You know, numbered cards, signature, foiled, inserts, variants. These are all just burning a hole in my pocket on my desk. So those are just some of the wheels that have been turning behind the scenes of the Chasers episodes. I'm also toying with the idea of maybe more than 2 packs per episode. It is a different format. Don't get me wrong. If you're out there looking at box breaks and stuff like that, this might run a little too slow for you, but that's by design. You know, I like those videos as much as the next guy, but they tear through like an entire box in the time it takes Evelyn and I to, you know, really appreciate those 9 cards. So if that goes against what you're out there for, I don't think that's going to change much, but maybe there's a happy medium where, again, we do more than 1 pack per episode. Certainly for the boxes where like the packs carry nowhere near 9 cards. So get at me on the socials. Let me know what you think, what direction you quite possibly think I should head in. And if you really want, like, I will literally do whatever you say if you're on Patreon or PayPal for that matter, if you've availed yourself of either of those links. But either way, thanks for watching when you do watch, every Wednesday at 8 and apparently every Saturday morning too.